Hello folks, you're taking a look at my current bench that I have for my bonsai trees. And you see I've got some seedlings and stuff like that, and you can't really tell anything about it because it's completely too full. Well, it's time to do a little something about that. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. These are some of the materials that I'm using. You'll probably recognize these if you've ever been to Home Depot or Lowe's. These are their cheap landscaping blocks that they have. These are made by a company called Castle Wall. They're 12-inch. They're under $3 a piece. So you can actually build pretty cheaply with those. I've got most of these. I've got 2 pallets that I'm going to do a wall around a couple of trees on a hillside that I've got, and I'll show you that later. But right now, these are what I'm going to be using. This is my detached, it's a 2-car garage, but I use it for my workshop. I did a new shop video when I first started making videos, many years ago, 7-8 years ago. Anyway, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I've started. You can see the starting of these blocks that I was telling you about and how I did them. And I'll show you one more. I put them on some 18-inch square by, I think they're about 1.5 inches. They call them 2 inches, I think, thick. They're just concrete pads is all they are. And I used one on the bottom, and then I put one on the top to make me able to make them a little bit wider for the pressure treated beams that I'm using. I did use, in order to start the base and make it perfectly level, I used a product that I got at, well, both Lowe's and Home Depot have it, I guess. It's called Paver Mix, and it's a mix of different size little stones and sand and gravel, and it really packs perfectly. I put down about 1 inch of that, and then I used it with my squares to level those stones before I put the blocks on. So let me show you how I had to prepare the blocks in order to use them. They all come with a lip on the back of them, and you've got to get rid of that lip if you're going to use them flat like this and not have them offsetting. So let me show you that. When you first get these blocks, they've got the decorative side on the outside. This is the bottom of the block, and as you can see, it has this ridge that runs the full length of it. It sets up maybe 3/8 to 1/2 inch, and you need to break that off. I think they are kind of designed that way, so they're pretty easy to break off, but unless I've found several different ways to do it. You can see all the ones that I broke off while I was doing the block, but let me show you how I do this. Okay, you can use several tools when you're doing this. I use a little sledgehammer and a chisel that's kind of wide, somewhat sharp. You know how stone chisels are, they're never completely sharp. You can also, if you've got a good eye and a good swing, you can use a regular brick hammer to hit these right back here. But I find that I'm more accurate when I use a chisel. there's a groove right here. It's in the back. I start by resting down the height of that thing, and I put a corner of the chisel on each side, and you'll see it'll make a little mark. You already see a crack there, but stay all the way across there. And it just pops off, and it pops off usually pretty close. Every now and then you'll need to knock off a little piece, or if you've got some sticking up there. You go to the other side and you do the same thing. Really doesn't hurt you if you are a little too low, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to be too high, because then it will break it and leave a little ridge of stuff back there, and that completely defeats the purpose. And then I just take this, and if there's any little pieces sticking up there, then you can do that. And that's how you break those off. Now, I usually will put this side down, but since on what I'm doing now with my bonsai bench, you can really put them up either way, because this is in towards the center. Just to show you an example of how I put these pillars together, and why I think these are so good. They would be either good for something like this, or if you wanted to make different pillars in different locations, this might be an alternative to using cinder blocks or wood or something like that. I have a colonial home with a lot of red brick on it, and I thought these red stones would complement that, so that's kind of the reason that I'm using these. But anyway, after you've knocked off the bottom of them, you'll see they look flat now. Then on the back, I showed you earlier this groove that's on here. I line my first row, and you can build these as high as you want. And I put two of them there together like that. And you'll notice these two grooves turn into like a square right there. I don't know what the purpose of that is, maybe for wiring or something like that, but whatever. And then I take another two. I've just got one here, but you can imagine if I had two. And I take the other ones and I put them opposite that. And I line up the square, or the groove on the back of it, and I alternate them this way. You can kind of place them. And they set, of course it's sitting up here on this 4x4, but they sit very very flat. These are really a dream to work with. And if you look at that, for each one of these pillars, those two 18-inch stepping stone like that I have on the bottom to level and on the top to make it wider, and 8 of these probably is going to be under $30 for a pillar. So, and then of course you have your 4x4s or whatever material you're going to use like that, and that would kind of be the cost. Finally, I'm going to show you the last thing is the decking that I'm going to put on this. Several years ago, I lucked out. My brother-in-law, who lives in the Atlanta, Georgia area, had a house on a lake down there, and he had to replace his deck. He used this lumber that it's called Ipe, I-P-E. Another name for it is Greenheart. And he had 2-foot sections that were too long for the deck, so he cut off about 30 of these, and he gave them to me, and I've just had them in storage for many years. This stuff is so heavy and so hard, and it's supposed to last. An old joke is it will last a couple of weeks longer than a rock, but it's very weatherproof. I think they put a product on it to seal it when they put them on the decks, but you really don't have to do that. They have used these for many years in boat building and things like that to do with salt water and stuff. So I just lucked out having this, and I'm going to put these on here. You'll see that I have pre-drilled, because you would never drive a screw through this, and I countersunk it so that the screw would go below it. I'm using a number 7 pressure treated lumber screw for this, because I'm driving it down into pressure treated lumber. And I'll show you what it looks like after I get it put on here. I wanted to take a minute to show you how I'm putting these on, in case any of you might have questions on that, although it's not terrible. It's terribly hard. I brought out 2 scrap boards that I had. One was about 1.5 and one was 1 3/4. And I started off with the 1.5, and I laid all of my boards up here and I spaced them out roughly to see where it came. And the 1 3/4 was too big a space. They weren't coming out right at the end of the beams. So the 1.5 was perfect for this. And what I do is I have a square that I run back along the beams to make sure that they're square, and I do that about every 2nd or 3rd board just to make sure that I'm staying square. And then after I have one down, like this one's screwed, I put my spacer board in, I bring the other one up to it, and then I have another square that I have 4.5 inches, and I use this to move the board back 4.5 inches until it hits on the beam, and then I know I'm keeping them all the same length. Then after that, I put my 2 screws in my pre-drilled board. I have my drill cut way back so that it doesn't strip the screws into this soft pressure treated lumber, and then I just drive the screws. You'll hear it skip after it gets as tight as I want it. And then I've checked to make sure and that those are perfect. I might snug them up a little bit, but I don't want it any tighter than that. And then if I want to, I can test the board that I just put in, and as you can see, it's perfectly square. So this is a good system. I'll show you one more time. Spacer, put the board in. Take it back until it is touching. And drive the screws. If you don't have a drill that's got a clutch on it, be sure that you don't over tighten these, because they will these are only going an inch down into this pressure treated lumber, and they'll strip if you don't. I could use a longer screw, but I've always found this is sufficient outside. Okay, I'll show you when I'm finished. I've finished installing the Greenheart or Ipe boards on here. I put a little mulch around it, and I think that it's ready for me to load up with some bonsais. I'm quite sure that this one will end up not being enough, so I still have some of the boards left, and I have a lot of the concrete blocks that I can build some more of these. So I'm glad I had a chance to show you this. I don't know if this is exactly a solution for you, but it worked well for me, and I hope that you'll come back and visit sometime. This is Period Woodworker. Talk to you later. Goodbye.